Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in again to the DPS 7 Points podcast. We are in a working hangar here at Falcon Field because we're talking aviation.
Right, we're here with Sergeant Brian Hahn, who is our Aviation UAS
Program Manager.
It's a lot of words, but thank you for being here. This is something that interests me greatly because within the last 10 years, to see the way our drone program has evolved has been pretty fun to watch. But before we get into everything drones and what you do and what we're doing as an agency with drones, we want to learn a little bit more about Brian and a little about you personally. So if you wouldn't mind sharing maybe what you're willing to, where you grew up, your life a little bit, how you got here, children, hobbies. We definitely want to learn about the things you do outside of drones.
Absolutely.
So, go ahead.
So grew up in Tucson. Spent most of my young life there. And then high school years, my dad moved to Las Cruces, New Mexico for a business opportunity. Took the family out there, spent my high school years there. Literally the week I graduated, I was back in Arizona. Spent a year here before my parents decided that it was a good idea to join back as well. So they joined me back there. And then I went and spent 2 years in Washington State, serving a mission for my church, which was a pivotal point for me because while I was up there, somebody just out of the blue said, "You know what, Hahn? You'd make a good cop."
Just like that?
Just like that.
Okay.
Just out of the blue.
Right.
And he had just graduated from the Border Patrol Academy, so it was fresh on his mind. But up to that point, I wanted to be in computer sciences. I cannot imagine my life in computer sciences right now. This is where I've been for the past 20 some odd years, and I'm very happy with it. So as soon as I got back from that, I went and got my real estate license just to try and, get some sort of a career ahead of me. And then met my wife, and we got married. And shortly after that, I jumped into the Corrections Academy with the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Did that for a little over a year, and then decided to move on to deputy. So in 2004, I became a deputy with the Pima County Sheriff's Department. Had a great time there, but wanted to move onwards. And my father had actually, after I had gone through the police academy, he decided to do so as well. And he went on with Phoenix PD.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I didn't know that. Yeah,
that is,
I didn't know.
that's pretty cool.
it's pretty neat.
So
no
at
idea.
that point in time, he was told that it was the first time in Phoenix PD history that a son in uniform had pinned the badge on their father.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a reversal. Yeah.
That's a neat,
Right?
that's
Yeah,
actually a
yeah.
really
So-
cool
yeah.
story.
So that was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that, somebody mentioned to my dad DPS. And he wasn't enjoying his time at Phoenix as much as he thought he would, but he really liked the idea of DPS. So he came to me and said, "Hey, what if the two of us lateral over to DPS?" Okay. So we did. So in, 2005, he and I decided to make the shift over to DPS. And then at that point in time, we were told that we were the first father and son to go through advanced basic with DPS, lateraling over together.
Oh yeah, I don't think
Wow.
I've ever heard of that
Wow.
before, actually.
Yeah.
So-
So we went through that in, was it 05 or no, that was 07 that we went through there. And then he ended up not staying with the agency, and he left and he went back to what he was doing beforehand. But I stuck around, spent, so what was it, 7 years out in Siloam, 3 years out in Ajo, and then was convinced to come to our Vehicular Crimes Unit, where I spent a good amount of time before coming over here.
So vehicular crimes, I've said it. If you want overtime, and if you don't really want much of a life, go into vehicular crimes, because the skills that our detectives in vehicular crimes have, we use for all of our investigations, not even related to vehicular crimes. So they get called
Absolutely.
out for everything.
Yep.
So I'm sure you were busy. How long were you in vehicular crimes?
I was in VCU for almost 9 years. So
Wow.
one of the longest 10 years over there, but I enjoyed it. I loved it. Had some great learning opportunities. I was presented with opportunities that I wouldn't have had any other place
Yeah.
in VCU, which actually brought me into the drones. But I'll get to that in a bit. But with my personal life, shocker, I fly drones. Pretty much everywhere I go with me, I have a drone.
Okay.
You know, I go to vacation in Hawaii, my little drone comes with me.
Okay.
We go hiking in the mountains, my little drone goes with me. Get some awesome family photos that way, some good scenery
yeah.
and stuff like that.
Is there something in particular that you like doing with the drone on your off time? Like, is it nature? Is it?
I like capturing shots that you can't get any other way.
Very unique shots.
Very
Yes.
unique shots,
Yeah.
whether it be
Yeah.
like straight top-down shots of
Mhm.
something,
Right.
or orbits of something in the sky, or, you know, just things that you know, that you can't get any other way. So it creates some fun stuff. When we go to Hawaii, I like to fly the drones out and see if we can't find any ocean life out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe do a little bit of whale watching with the drones or something like that. Get some really fun footage that way that, like I said, you can't get any other way.
The aerial
Oh,
view
yeah.
gives you such a different perspective.
Absolutely.
And I was actually talking to my kids about you coming on, that we're going to be talking about drones and things like that. And I explained a little bit how we use them. And I don't know all the technology myself, but I've seen them used on scenes that I've been on. But, you know, I was explaining to them how when you're standing on the road looking at a scene in front of you, sometimes things just don't make sense.
Right.
How did that car get there in that position? But when you look at it from above and you can see everything, you're like, oh, now it makes sense.
Absolutely.
So that aerial view, you know, when we diagram scenes, and when you started, we did it by hand.
Yep.
So I was explaining to them how, to scale, we would draw these things by hand. And I remember one particular collision that we investigated. It involved a skid steer and a van, another car going the other way, and we just couldn't make sense of everything. We had all the debris everywhere and all of our evidence in the scene. As soon as we laid it out and diagrammed it, everything made sense of exactly how this thing happened.
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, these drones are cool. You like doing that on your off
yeah.
time, and you spend a lot of time doing that.
Absolutely. And then I like to mix drones with mountain biking. I love to mountain bike as well. And I can take a drone and I can put it in a follow me mode, and the drone can follow me while I'm mountain biking without a pilot assisting. So it gets some good fun shots that way.
That's amazing.
So how did your marriage, if you will, with drones happen?
So while I was in the Vehicular Crimes Unit,
Right.
we went to a conference, and it was a collision conference, and they were talking about photogrammetry. So the science of taking photographs and stitching them together to be able to take measurements from those photographs. And they showed us that we could use photographs to create 3D versions of our scenes. So they took just regular old camera phone, walked around a vehicle, taking a series of photographs, were able to stitch it together in this software and create a 3D version of the vehicle that was measurable, scalable. You could drop it into simulation software, things like that. And then they started talking about using drones for that. So in the Vehicular Crimes Unit, I then went to my supervisor at the time and I presented the technological idea to him. And we looked at department policy and everything, and there wasn't anything prohibiting it. So I went through the process on my own to get my FAA Part 107 license so that I could operate the drone. Figured out how to gain airspace clearances in restricted airspace. And my supervisor purchased me a drone, and we just went out and started using it. And so we started doing collision scenes with it. And like you were saying, a top-down version of a collision scene is a completely different thing. You know, back when we started, you know, if it was a big collision scene, you know, in the Salome or Ajo office, I'd have 4 or 5 pieces of paper taped together on a table, and I'd be, you know, drawing on that thing for days sometimes. Well, now I can get that drone out there, and within 20 minutes, I can capture the entire scene without any of my guys having to stand in the scene, get everybody out of the roadway, and have it be safer and quicker and collect more data. And sometimes just not even the photogrammetry, but sometimes just a single photograph from the sky. So there was one collision scene on the 202 where a drunk driver had gone and pinballed through a whole bunch of other vehicles. There was stop traffic, construction, and he just went straight through this scene, pushing vehicles out of the way, injured a few people, killed somebody. And so we were out there measuring this scene traditionally like we always have, but then I put the drone up and I took photographs. But what I like to do is I call them end cap photographs. I'll put the drone up at the far side of the scene, and I'll take a shot that captures the whole scene from an angle. So you could see on that single photograph the vehicles that had been pushed out of the way, where his vehicle ended up. And when I spoke to the county attorneys afterward, they said that single photograph, after the defense attorney looked at that, turned to the client and said, plead.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because that single photograph told the entire story.
The proof was in the photo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
But we're in an era of technology, and we, as law enforcement, we're trying to embrace it like everyone else. We're trying to find ways to utilize it to make us more efficient, clear scenes faster, like we've talked about. And we saw it just the other day. We had a fatality out on I-10, and the road was opened so much more quickly than it would have been had we hand measured and hand rolled like we used to.
Absolutely. And not only that, when you measure a scene hand measured, you're only collecting the specific points of data that you want to collect.
Right.
When you're doing this with the drone, you're collecting all data. So that way I can create a 3D rendering of the scene afterwards, and I can literally walk a jury or walk a victim's family through that scene exactly how it was that day. We're not missing any of that data that we might have if we had, maybe decided something wasn't important to collect or missed something. It's all being collected by those photographs and then turned into either a two-dimensional, like really, really detailed Google Maps image of the scene or a 3D rendering.
So walk us through, let's start with the evolution of our drone program here at the agency. You talked about how we started using our first one. Where did it go from there? And how are we using drones now? What work groups, what work units are now using drones, and how are we utilizing them?
So we started off with little old me and a Phantom 4 Pro drone.
Oh.
To get it off the shelf at Costco. Unbeknownst to me, our aviation division was actually attempting at the same time to start a drone program, but unsuccessfully. They weren't able to get buy-in from command staff.
Okay.
So I went in and I just started doing this, right? Once aviation found out that I was doing it, the knee-jerk reaction was, oh, shoot, let's make sure he's doing this right. So initially, they actually stopped me from doing what I was doing. They said, time out, hold on. But as soon as they figured out that I was going through all the proper steps, that I got my Part 107, that I was getting airspace clearances and restricted airspace and things like that, brought me into the fold. So at that point in time, it was Sergeant Ryan Freeman in aviation who was trying to get it going. So he and I started putting our heads together, and we created a training curriculum. We created the general order, the manual, and we started teaching drone schools. So the way we do our drone schools here at DPS is before you go through the Arizona DPS training, you have to get your FAA Part 107 license. So that's essentially the FAA's way of making sure that we know how to operate our drones in the same airspace as manned aircraft. Manned aircraft will always take priority because there's life aboard those, whereas ours, cameras with wings. So we make sure that we're being safe as we're operating those in the sky. So the pilots in training first get that, and then they go through our ground school. So our ground school is a 40-hour, week-long school. They get a refresher on the FAA rules and regs. They get updates on the Arizona state laws regarding drones, department policies, and then we put them through scenarios and drills and flight maneuvers. They get 10 hours of flight time before they graduate from our DPS drone school. They have to be able to complete a skills evaluation and a check flight to make sure that they're to the point where we need them.
But if you're a drone operator, you go through all of that. It doesn't end there. I've had troopers that have worked for me that were drone operators, and they had to consistently keep up and track the training and maintenance and all that stuff.
Correct. We require them to get 60 minutes of flight time 90 minutes of flight time every 60 days. So, but that's the absolute bare minimum. This is a diminishing skill set. If you don't fly this thing periodically, you're going to lose that skill set. And so we encourage our pilots to get out there and to practice, to train, to learn and to grow on these.
Yeah. Wow. And it's like anything else. You don't keep it maintained. You don't keep the batteries charged. I mean, there's just little things that you run into a situation where you bring it to a scene and it doesn't work. The software doesn't work, whatever. And then it's useless to you. So,
right. You don't want to be that guy who shows up on a super important scene. You get there, your batteries are all drained dead. Your memory card's full. The software is out of date. So we encourage them to keep up on that. Each pilot is assigned their own drone. So it's kind of the way we have our patrol cars. You know, you're assigned this drone. This is your drone. You maintain it, you take care of it, you have some vested interest in this drone.
Yeah.
All right. So that way they get to know their drone intimately. I mean, we started the drone program out with scene mapping. That's where the department cut our teeth. And to this day, we're in the state of Arizona. We're still one of the premier mapping agencies. You know, I have helped other people get their mapping programs started and things like that. But we're still kind of taking the cake on that a little bit. But from there, other work groups started realizing we have stuff going on. So Hazmat jumped in very quickly, because they can take a drone, send it down range, or even use the zoom camera, be able to assess a dangerous situation without ever having to put a human in danger.
Yeah.
Right. So the human lives that could possibly be saved, the cost in finances as well. I didn't realize that their hazmat suits that they put on, some of them are one-time use, and a couple $1,000s at that.
Wow.
Oh,
So they're
yeah.
able to put a drone down range, never have to damage the drone, never have to spend that money on a hazmat suit, and get an idea on what's going on down range.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, our tactical groups jumped in on it as well. They were able to see that we could use these for scouting missions, for surveillance, for just an eye in the sky to be able to help out operations. And so it kind of snowballed from there. Even our wireless services bureau, they have a couple drones that they can now use to do surveys of our radio towers throughout the state.
Okay.
So once again, instead of putting somebody in danger, having to put in a climbing harness, send them all the way up a radio tower, they can now send a drone up that radio tower, take photographs of serial numbers, you know, see if there's any damage to the systems and stuff like that.
So drones are assigned. This one in front of us is assigned to Brian Hahn.
That one is one of my drones, yes.
So tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here.
So this is the DJI M300. The camera that it has on there is a thermal camera with a 200 times zoom. There's another camera that we can put on it that's specifically designed for mapping. I can also mount a spotlight to it. So this one is kind of our catch-all, do-all. She's a bit of a beast. And then the temperature ratings, it can fly in really hot weather. It can fly in just a little bit of rain, stuff like that. So this one is kind of our do-all drone.
Okay.
It's a little bit bigger, a little bit tougher to lug around. So we don't give this out to every single trooper because we only have so much space in our patrol cars. So our specialized units have this. So our Vehicular Crimes Unit has this. Our React groups have this for, doing collision scenes as well. Some of our tactical groups have this, and our Wireless Services Bureau has one of these as well.
So we were talking about an example where you actually used this model drone after some severe flooding in Globe.
Yep.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so when the flooding happened in Globe, what was it, 3 months ago now?
A little longer than that.
Yeah.
Little long, yeah.
A little longer than that, 3 or 4 months ago. The amount of forces that they were able to bring to bear was pretty good. You know, all the agencies came together. It was fantastic. But with as much damage as the water had caused, with brushing trees in and things like that, covering things from the ground was pretty difficult.
Right.
And so they asked for DPS to help. And so we brought in, depending on the day and stuff like that, we brought in anywhere between 4 to 6 drones to come help out. And there were drones like this, about this size. In fact, this very drone was out there doing some good work. So we were able to fly the waterways where we weren't able to get people in on foot, and we were able to look for stranded vehicles, stranded people. We were able to look for damage to buildings, to structures, to bridges, things like that, able to cover a lot more ground than anybody was able to on foot. And then we were able to capture video and photos of those and then provide those to the city managers so that they could do assessments for insurance. They could, see what repairs needed to be done and things like that to be able to distribute resources. So it was an absolute force multiplier.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when you have that much damage over that much time and as long as it lasted, imagine the cost to keep a helicopter up in the air, and then it would have to come down, for all the maintenance and fuel and all that stuff. So this isn't here in that capacity to replace our helicopters in any way, shape, or form, but it just fills in some really important gaps to help bolster our capabilities from the air, right?
Our department helicopters were out there working as well.
Yep.
But they were able to focus on the higher impact areas, and they were able to cover that ground, and then we were able to take our multiple drones and cover multiple other areas. So we were able to free them up from some of the I don't want to say mundane, but we were able to allow them to focus on the more important areas, the more high impact zones.
Yeah. So the other point I wanted to touch on is we talked about troopers having them in their patrol cars. We just touched on it briefly. Let's talk about how Highway Patrol is using these drones, not this one in particular, smaller ones. But we have a lot of troopers that are assigned drones out in the field. And then we recently, from my understanding, have a new type of drone that's actually mounted to the back of some of our pickups.
We do.
Oh, yeah, the fixed ones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those.
Yeah.
So troopers are carrying drones in their vehicles for a whole host of reasons. Pretty much, it's limited by their imagination only. Mapping is one of the primary reasons. You know, that way they can get out, they can map a scene very quickly, and like I was saying, they don't have to be in the road to do it. They capture all that data, clear the road, get things moving much quicker. But then we're able to use them in tactical situations as well. So you have a vehicle bailout, you have a giant desert to search, pop a drone up in the air, get an eye out there. You have, you know, if you're searching for anything, being able to have that eagle eye view is very important. We had one where a suspect had ran from us out in Casa Grande area, and our trooper deployed the drone, just so happened to be one of these bad boys. And the trooper was able to use the FLIR camera to locate the suspect in the desert, turn the spotlight on, and the suspect proned himself out on the ground because he thought it was a helicopter who was there for him. So our trooper was able to hold him in place until they were able to come get him.
Wow.
Barricaded subjects in vehicles. We're able to put a drone out there and be able to see what they have in their hands, see what they've got going on before we ever put a person out there.
Yeah.
So we're able to use them for that. We're also able to use them for protests or for demonstrations, just to be able to get an eye on the situation.
Yeah.
And then for the tethered drones, so the tethered drones run on a cable system, so they are attached to the vehicle, and then it runs up, and depending on the length of the cable, 150, 200 foot, the drone can sit there indefinitely because it's running off the battery on the vehicle. So most drones, this one you'll get about a 30, 35 minute flight time. The smaller drones, 20, 25 minute flight time, but that one literally indefinitely. So you can put that up in the sky if you've got a prolonged operation, or you just want to keep visibility on any given object or event or something like that. Put that thing up and it can stay there. All of these drones are currently running on software that the department just purchased that allows us to then live stream that footage to anybody that it needs to go to.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm thinking of certain situations, especially some that I've been a part of, where we've had bailouts of suspects and things like that, that ultimately resulted in maybe a tactical response being needed. But there's not such thing as too much information, I don't think, when it comes to safety and providing information to our TAC units that are coming. So when we're able to launch one of these, tell them how many people we can see in the car, what they're doing, all of these things before they even get there, they're that much more prepared to go into this dangerous situation.
Absolutely. Even our SWAT team. Our SWAT team heavily uses drones. So on most of their operations, we'll have a drone popped up in the air before they roll up on scene so that they can get a good eye on what's happening. You know, whether there's animals in the backyard, whether there's people in the front yard, vehicles that they might need to deal with, things like that. So they're able to see that. And then as they roll up on scene, you know, they'll call outs and things like that. And then before we ever send a person into that house, if feasible, we'll send a drone into that house. We have smaller little indoor drones that we'll send in. So they have protected guards on the blades. So there's not going to be a danger to anyone in there. It can bump off walls and keep going. And we'll send that drone in there and we'll go check it out. That way the SWAT team, before they go in, they know the layout of the house. They know any potential obstacles. And there have been times we have found animals or people inside the house that we were then able to deal with appropriately.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So one thing we want to let the public know, I guess, is when it comes to these drones, these aren't just for our agency. We around the state assist any agency that needs our help. And even if they're taking lead on an investigation, we will take our drone and fly the scene for them if they want. So our troopers are helping all around the state with this equipment, helping other agencies that need it.
Absolutely. Specifically our remote duty troopers.
Yes.
Our remote duty troopers, you know, sometimes the county agency, our troop is the only other person out there with them.
Right.
So all the time, you
Yeah.
know, assisting with other work groups, assisting with other tasks, other agencies.
Let's touch lastly, I think, on privacy concerns.
Yep.
because that's a
That's
big,
that's a big thing. That's a big thing.
especially
Absolutely.
right
Yeah, it's a
now.
big thing. Yeah.
Let's talk. Let's reassure the public on how we're using these drones, and how serious we take their privacy too. So
Absolutely. So first and foremost, we're never going to just fly the drone around and start peeking into people's backyards or into people's houses.
Right.
That is never going to happen, right? Anytime we're using this drone, we're either going to have a search warrant for the residence or for the structure that we're flying over, or it's going to be in an open area with an open operation going, and we're using it for the safety of our officers.
Okay.
So this is never going to be used as, like people say, like a Minority Report type thing, where we're going and just looking to see who's doing wrong. These are not a patrol unit; these are a response unit. So that's never going to happen.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. So second, anytime we capture footage with this, the drone is not always recording all footage at all times. If there is a time where it is recording footage, that footage is going to be placed into evidence.com along with any body cam footage or anything like that. So it'll be there available for review or
and attached to a report number.
Absolutely.
And everything, just
like any other
Yeah.
video or photo would be captured as well. And then recently, nationwide, there's been concerns about the security of foreign-made drones.
Right.
A vast majority of the drones that we use are foreign-made drones. They are absolutely phenomenal pieces of machinery, and they just get out there and they work. The department has taken steps to ensure that whether or not our data is actually being taken and used by malefactors, used by foreign countries or whatnot, the department has taken steps to purchase software that firewalls the manufacturer from our drones. So the data that is captured by our drones stays with our agency. It stays with the company that we have contracted with, and they are a US-based company. That is also the same software that we're using then to capture our flight logs. So any flights that we have with these things are captured automatically, so we can show where the drones were flying, what they were doing, and that way we can make sure that we're doing what we need to be doing where we need to be doing it. And then that also provides us the opportunity to live stream that footage to command staff, to those who are making decisions based on the information that we need to be gathering.
Okay.
Where do you see this program going from here?
Yeah. What's
Are
next?
we at the
What's next?
precipice? Or are
Right.
we at the peak?
Absolutely not.
We're not.
No. We're working with multiple companies
Okay.
who are producing newer systems. They're producing newer technology. It's getting better. It's getting faster. It's getting smaller. It's more efficient. We're going to get to the point where I think eventually every patrol unit could potentially have a small UAS that would be deployable and would be able to lock onto the GPS position of, say, their body camera and be able to be that eye in the sky, kind of like an aerial body camera. There are technologies like that out there right now. We're just waiting for them to get smaller and better. But it's only going to help us and the public stay safer.
Right.
So long as the technology is used responsibly, like we fully intend to do with it.
Sure.
The things that we're able to do, the investigations that we're able to forward, the evidence we're able to collect, it's only going to get better and better.
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. I got to say before we go, I met you a couple years ago when we were having some fun. You were flying a drone at our No Drone Zone public service announcement. That was great, and maybe we'll do it again sometime.
That was the beginning of my cinematic debut, both as a cinematographer and as an actor.
There you go. There you go.
Well, we are going to be working together here in the near future because we want to show the public some of the things that we've done with drones. So we'll be putting stuff out on our social media platforms here in the near future, showing some of the operations we've done, showing how we utilize the drones, because I think it's fascinating how we're using this technology, and I think a lot of people would be interested in seeing how we're actually using it on the ground.
Absolutely. I have a ton of fun with it, and I love doing community outreach type stuff. I've got a couple high schools that they request me to come back each semester so that we can do presentations for their classes and things like that.
Awesome.
It's all fun for me.
Cool.
That's awesome. Well, Brian, thank you. Thanks for having us. I mean, we having you, and we enjoy it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for our listeners and our viewers to the DPS 7 Points podcast, coming to you from a working hangar here at Falcon Field in Mesa, Arizona.
Have a good day.